Hello, hello, hello. I didn't break anything today, did I?
Hello, everyone. No, you didn't. It's looking really good, I think.
Good. It's never late to break something.
No.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with my very good friend Jonas. Oh, see, I got it right this time. Although I'm
Oh,
looking
let's see if I get it right.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. It's a 50-50 chance every single time.
Yes, absolutely.
So, we've got a bunch of questions. We're going to see the questions in the chats. And let me start with some minor housekeeping here. And I'm going to maximize my screen just to go through the process. So if you want to get a nice little page with all the links, with the t-shirts and the events and the training team, YouTube channel and Cineversity, and even ask your questions, all you have to do is go to this link here, which, as far as I know, Jonas is going to paste in the chat. And let me do this.
I will do that indeed.
You can take a snapshot of this little QR code, and it should take you to this page. If it doesn't, just let us know. Well, I keep saying that, but I've never tested it. Okay, so
I did. It's taking you to that page.
excellent. So generally for Maxon events, just go to the events page, and you'll see what's going on, what's upcoming, and you can search through it and select regions and all that. So all the important stuff is here as far as events are concerned. Look at these two handsome fellas here. Okay, and if you want to catch these streams recorded, make sure you go to the Maxon Training Team channel, because although we are streaming both on the Maxon Training Team channel and the Maxon channel, the recordings are stored on one channel, the Maxon Training Team channel. So if you want to catch any older shows, just go to the Maxon Training Team channel, subscribe, click buttons and notifications and all that. But if you want to watch generally a ton of content, you can also go to the Maxon YouTube channel. We have thousands upon thousands of videos, presentations, artist interviews, and all sorts of other cool stuff. And of course, if you want to learn this amazing piece of software called ZBrush, it's the leading sculpting software, and it's getting better by the minute. Go and check out tutorials and presentations on the Maxon ZBrush YouTube channel. Now, always as a token of appreciation for your participation in our shows, we allow you once a month to go and get a free t-shirt. So go to this little page here, which again, the link you will find over here where it says get your t-shirt. And for this month, easy motion graphics, no spaces, all caps, is your passcode. And finally, don't forget to watch tons of content on the old Cineversity website and the new Cineversity that has a lot of new content and in many languages as well. So yeah, I think I didn't forget anything. So let me do this. Back to people. You're muted, by the way. Just don't forget about
Yeah,
that.
I know.
There you go. Fantastic.
Just unmuted myself.
And
I was typing in the background. I muted myself because of that.
good. So what we could do now is we can start taking turns or dealing with some questions that some of our lovely viewers sent. And do you want to start? Do you have something to start with, Jonas?
Yeah, I can start, definitely. Let me show my screen here. So what I have here is a CAD model that I imported into Cinema 4D. And the question was a little bit too long to show on screen, but basically it was what is a good way to import CAD data into Cinema 4D? But then also there was a second question about that. There was the person who asked, added some textures and then used cubic mapping to get the texture on the model from all sides. And was asking if that is possible in Redshift, because he wasn't using Redshift. So what I have here is a front wheel assembly. I have that here on my other screen. I'm just gonna drag and drop it in here to show you all these settings for the CAD import. It's not just for step files, it's also pretty similar for JT files, for SolidWorks, for CATIA files, and for IGES. So, and these are not the default ones because I already set it too high with the other model, but usually it's set to original. You can usually leave that as is. So if you know that your CAD file is or has been created in a certain way, you can go to the modifications page and maybe even combine a few of the geometries by topologies. Oh, you can first use the original bodies. You can use by topology, which means that everything that is close enough with each other will be melted together, similar to a connect. By color, that would be display color, if I'm not mistaken, and by layer. So if the CAD file is organized in, let's say, a colorful way or a layerful way, then it might be clever to just use that for the import. Once you've set everything up, just hit OK. And yeah, in this case, I have it open already. I'm just going to click yes. And then we have to wait a little bit. In the meantime, things are happening. It's first of all creating the geometry in CAD files where, people work with NURB surfaces, which are resolution independent. As soon as you put it into 3D, in a 3D DCC, it will be tessellated. So polygons will be created out of those NURBS surfaces. So in this case, this is a pretty light CAD model. That's why it was so fast. If you have a more complex one, it's absolutely fine to wait for 5, 10, or sometimes I even had one file that took 20 minutes to import because it was so complex. But now I have this here, right? And let's have a look at the topology. I'm going to go to display and Gouraud shading with lines. It's a little bit hard to see because the colors are still there. Those are display colors. But
put it on hidden lines. Put it on hidden lines where it's just gray with black lines. There you go. And
yeah. So you can see it here. With the other one, which was imported with higher resolution or higher detail settings, you can see that there is even more detail here. But one thing that is pretty typical with CAD files is that you have a lot of topology here on the surface. Some of the edges are, they don't have a bevel. And these are things that we need to take care of. And also we want to add variation to the whole thing, texture-wise. So we need to find a way to apply textures there. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to switch back to Gouraud shading with lines so that I can see a little bit of the shading here. And then usually what I do is I go to one of the component modes and middle mouse click the top object, the top level object, to select all of these objects. This is a step that you don't necessarily have to do, but I just wanted to show it to you. When you go to Mesh and then Cut, un-triangulate, there are a few things that you can do that are good to clean up the meshes, especially when you want to add geometry bevels later. It can be clever to have cleaner topology than that. And in this case, I'm just going to hit the Create N-Gon and hit Apply. And suddenly you can see that all the N-Gons here are gone based on the angle here. So everything that is below that angle in terms of polygon next to polygon, right? If it's below 0.1 degrees, it will just melt stuff together. This way, I can make sure that all the detail that I need here in these areas is still there. But also often when you import machine parts, those are just really big parts that are planar but have a lot of holes and other stuff, complex outlines. And with this, you can make the whole thing a little more, a little cleaner. So that is the first thing that I wanted to show you regarding CAD files. Then the next one is already Redshift. So what I would do here, because I have those two colors already, is I would just go in and just create one material and apply that to everything. And then sometimes that will work. In other cases, this won't work. But I just want to show you that workflow. When you double click here, there is a way in a Redshift material to read the display color. As you have noticed, some parts here were white, others were black, and I want to read that color. So let me double click here and search for a color user data. Color user data. This is the one. And the default is black, but when I go to presets and objects, there is a display color entry. And now if I just solo this and let's render this whole thing, you can see that we now see the display colors of those different components here. We can pipe that into the color and unsolo this. Another way we could use this is, let's say we have different material types here. We could directly throw that into metalness as well. In this case, we are lucky because we have black and white parts. So this is working quite well as well. It doesn't look super good. So let's create a reflection environment. That's what we need here. So I'm going to bring up the asset browser, search for HDR, and just scroll down until I find something that looks like an industrial hall or something. There was one that I wanted to use. Was it this one? Let's see. Yeah, I think it was this one. Yeah, let's just go with this one. I'm just going to drag and drop that over to the object manager, and it will automatically create a dome light for me with the texture applied. You can see that here. So after some time, you can see this thing. Actually, I wanted to use this one. Let me use this one. I'm just going to replace this in the texture link. Let's wait for the rendering, and then it will work. Okay, then if you are working with these colors, then sometimes you might want to remap colors. Remapping colors can simply be done with a ramp node. So let's create the ramp node, and I'm going to do that for the colors, or for the one that is going into color. And then also usually a good idea is to right-click the ramp here, because this is ease in and ease out, and just change the interpolation to linear. Doesn't always make a difference that is important, but especially when you remap data and so on, make sure that you go with linear. And then let me bring up the black value here to something grayish, so that we can see a little more of this other stuff. Yeah, and then we could also use another ramp and drive roughness with that. I don't want to do this now, but it is possible. What I want to drive roughness with is actually an imperfection map. So let me search for imperfection. In case you didn't know, Cinema 4D has this asset browser that is full with really cool assets that you can use. For example, imperfection maps. And imperfection maps are a very important part of, or should be a very important part of pretty much every 3D project, because it is very easy to create super clean surfaces, but they are looking more realistic if there is a little bit of imperfection in these. That's something that our eyes are used to. So let me solo this one here. And now you see that this is actually UV mapped. It doesn't look too bad, to be honest. So in theory, you could use this. When I have a look around here, well, there are some problems here on the back side. But from this side, I would say that's okay. For a roughness map, you could use that. However, the question that I got was, they set this one here to cubic. And this is also possible in Redshift. That was the question, if it's possible. The answer is yes. But now, if you, let's say, go to texture mode and scale this down a little bit, at some point, because it's cubic, and let's have a look at this area here. So here, you can see that there is a hard cut. And depending on where you are with the texture, let's say here, you can see that very well, very clearly. But this is something that you definitely want to avoid. However, on the other side here, the texture is now mapped well. So is there a way to have a sort of cubical mapping, but blending the textures here? And the answer is yes. What you need here is a node that is called TriPlanar. TriPlanar. I'm gonna drag and drop that in here, and let me solo the TriPlanar node, and let me show you what it does. I'm gonna use different images for each axis because that's gonna give me RGB here, and this way I can see what's actually happening. All right, let me put it this way. So the green texture is coming from the top and from the bottom. The blue texture is coming from the left and the right in this case, and the red texture or shader color is coming from the front and the back. And then we have this blend amount here. If we set this down to 0, we pretty much have the same thing as we would have with cubical mapping. But we have the advantage that we can blur these, right? And now you can see that there's a soft transition here, and you can even see it back here on these parts. So what we could do now is, instead of using those 3 colors, we can go with same image on each axis and just use the texture in here. And now you can see that although there would be a little bit of a visible edge here, we can bring the blend amount up, and this will blur the edge. And then we can adjust the scale here, which is actually a tiling, if I'm not mistaken. And let me go to this one here as well. Put it in here, and now I'm happy. Okay, so let's put that into roughness and unsolo it. Now, one thing you can see, let me refresh this, is that everything is very rough, right? This doesn't look like metal anymore. So the problem here is that the texture is very white, and when I throw this into reflection roughness, this means that all black values will represent a strength of 0% roughness, while white values are representing a strength of 100% roughness. So we have to remap this. I'm going to do that by using another ramp. Let me do that. Here we go. I'm just going to drag and drop it onto the wire, and it will wire it up. Again, I'm going to switch this to linear interpolation. And then let's say we want to roughly be around 20% roughness. Then I would go to the black value and say, okay, we're going to use a brightness value of 10%. And for the white value, I'm going to use 30% instead. So now we have a gradient that is going from 10 to 30%. So the middle value is 20. This way we have a little bit of variation, but we are roughly in the area of 20% roughness. And you can see this is looking quite good already. The last thing that I want to change here, and this is a pretty essential thing when you're working with CAD models, is that, let me deactivate this and let's have a look at this edge here. So you can see there is absolutely no bevel. And my experience with CAD data is that usually you don't want to touch the geometry unless you really have to. So the question is there a way to create a round edge here without changing the geometry? And the answer again is yes. There is a node in Redshift that is called round corners. And I'm going to use this one and solo it so that you can see what it's doing. So basically what it's doing is creating a normal map for this area here that will then in rendering create a round edge or the illusion of a round edge. It won't change the geometry. So when you go really close and it's on a corner, it won't hold up because the corner will still be 100% sharp. But for many shots that are not super close-ups of these areas, this will work. So instead of using a radius of 0.5, let's rather go with something like 0.1, maybe even lower than that, 0.05. So now it's just a very small one. But the thing is, if I now throw this one into the bump map, you can see that we are now getting this very natural shiny edge here and here and here. It's just looking way better, way more natural. And these are actually the tips that I wanted to share for CAD data.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And let me show something about the round corners so that people know.
So round corners, that's one thing that that you have to know about round corners. It does come with a price, so render times will go up, but not super dramatically. But it's it needs a little bit of render time to do this. But on the other hand, you don't have to take care of the geometry because this is most of the time, at least for me, it used to be a nightmare.
Teaching time, I stole your screen.
All right.
So I'm going to doodle. If you just press Shift C and type doodle, you get this doodle. And you can draw here. So these are the two edges that Jonas had at where that thing was. And because they're flat polygons, the normals are facing like this and like this. And of course, normals is the way that indicate where a polygon is facing. What the round corners does, essentially, it finds using some sort of threshold of an angle between two polygons. What is threshold in this angle? And if it's beyond that threshold, it takes the normals and generates that normal map that goes, that sort of, it creates a transition from one to the other, from this one to this one. And that is used as a normal map, and it does it in render time. So although your polygon is facing this way, if you change its normals, you can make the software, the renderer, think that it's pointing this way or this way. And in fact, bump mapping and normal mapping, that's what it does. It changes these arrows based on an image to point in various directions and create the illusion of a bump. And that's how that works. I just want to put my little
exactly
Smarty Pant thing over there. Shall we go to some questions, or do you have something else to show?
No, we can directly jump to some questions.
Okay, let's start with the easy one, which was a question about how to create visible light cones in using Redshift. And basically, switch to my Redshift, and these are the light cones. And we're going to talk about these artifacts in a moment. If you're using environment, in any case, this is like glitch. If you're using an environment and you get weird artifacts, these are not normal. You can view them from one side, but not from the other side. The little trick is you go to the RS environment and you go to the attenuation, and you add a very small number. So it says 0, but if you add 0.0001, these are gone, and it renders faster. I do not know, with Jonas will try to figure out why that happens. We do not know why that happens. And the funny thing is that if you add one more 0, it rounds it to 0, but it's actually not 0. Whereas if you type 0 and press enter, very slow. Look at that. So if you are having problems with your volumes and lights and so forth, just make sure your attenuation in your RS environment object has a very, very, very small value, and it will even speed up. Now, let's see how this is created. So let's go to a new scene, and let's go and create. I'm going to create this using 2 lights, and I'm going to expose some of the intricacies of the volumetric shading. So this is a spotlight, and of course we can't see it because by definition lights are not, the rays are not visible. So you can put something here and you can see that it's lighting this nice little sphere, and just to make sure, there you go. So we know that that is working. Now the lights, unlike Cinema 4D's fake volumetric lighting, we need to create the volumetric effect using fog. And the only way to apply fog in Redshift is we need to go to this little menu here and add a Redshift environment. Now, by default, we're going to get a really blown out foggy thing, right? Don't forget, go attenuation 0.001. There you go. So that's correct now. And how do we control this? Well, if you want global control of your whole scene, you go and play with the varying attenuation factors and scattering and all that. You can create some interesting things and tint your environment, add noise, and go watch a tutorial and learn how to do that. But what if 0.0001 and right click, let's reset this. If you want to locally for each light control the volumetric contribution, there's another way. Now, just to make this fun, I'm going to use an area light. And look at that. You can barely see a little sphere over here. And that's because of the values and the way the volumetric light is propagated. And I'm going to make this smaller. There we go. Smaller, 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 smaller. But it's too much, right? I don't want to touch my RS environment because I want to use it in another context later on. So what you can do, you go to your light. Number one, intensity is one of the factors that contributes to this. And the same thing for this. And generally, point lights have enormous values, right? Enormous values because they emit from a point, which means that they will be close to 0 luminance, intensity, because Redshift tries to compute things. The bigger the light, the more light it emits, just like in real life. But still, I've got too much intensity. Well, the trick here is to go to the details over here is the volumetric contribution. And this basically, this little multiplier for each light allows you to tweak the amount that this particular light is going to contribute to the volume. And the great thing about this is that if you set it to 0, you can actually get away with a light that has a high intensity, but doesn't contribute to the, let's make this 250,000 or something like that. So it contributes to the lighting, but it doesn't contribute to the volume. So I was going to show light cones, right? So let's go back here. Let's set this to 1. I don't know, maybe increase the intensity a bit. Now, what you can change the type of fall off if you want. It's quadratic currently and all that nice stuff. But in terms of the area light, let's get rid of this one here. In terms of the area light, it's too spread. And 99% of the times, this is how we use area lights. And, let's bring it over here. So it has a little POW lighting our little sphere. What if I want to put some barn doors on this light? Well, go to any area light, and this applies to all the area lights. And we have the spread. And spread 1, it means that it emits 180 degrees approximately, right? It's a bit less because of the angle of instance. But if you make this smaller, you're actually door barning. I don't know what that's called, but something like that. Select these, press Control to change both values. And there you go. And you can set this to a disk, and you can change, I don't know, the decay. Let's set it to linear, which means you can set how much it's going to decay. You can do the start and the end, and then go and do the contribution of the light. 0.001. Yeah, I think it's the intensity that is causing this. There we go. So there are so many ways to create fake lights, that volumetric lights, and create all sorts of interesting effects. And yeah, that's all I have to say about this topic. Anything you want to add, my friend?
No, actually not. That was I think the full explanation of that topic. I have nothing to add.
Okay, let's go to a couple from our lovely, beautiful viewers, and let's begin with Sharon. How are you, Sharon? How's
I want to
everything?
take the one about the iRig, please.
You want to take? Yeah, you can take anything you want. So, my very good friend Sharon is asking, is there any setting for the CAD file that will make sure the orientation of the coordinate, I would assume, the actual coordinates, might always come on the other, on the other side, right? Oh, on their side. So you open the object and it's on its side. That's actually a very good question. I don't have a CAD file. You have control
Yes.
of
Yes.
switch to Jonas's screen. Would you
There is, let's go to step file, import. Is it in here? No, that's STL. That's not step. Here's step. Modifications, swap Y and Z axis. That should do the trick.
Yeah, because CAD software like Unreal Engine and other software, especially CAD, and the reason for CAD is traditionally in machining, when you're with drills and all that, your up and down, where your drill goes up and down, that's the Z. That's a traditional way because the the Z axis was the predominant one when you're drilling holes, and then they added the X and Y to move things around if you want to use a router or something like that. And as it was very nicely explained the other day in a seminar where you need to consider sometimes the scope of the axes, in the sense that in Cinema 4D, the Z-axis is forwards, right? We're facing, and we're always, when we open a document, the Z-axis is sort of where we're going, our direction. And and because we're standing up as humans, and our x-axis is left and right, and our up and down is the y, because if you put up a piece of paper or a television and look at it, this is how you're looking at it, the x and y axes, and z is where you move. But if the principle of a particular software is, for example, where we view things from top to bottom, like this, then they would have X and Y and the Z in or out. So sometimes these seemingly random decisions that were made by software developers, they're not that random. They do have a tie into the historical, let's say, context of what the software was made to do and so forth. And that's why you see predominantly in the CAD import to switch the Y with the Z, because most CAD software is Z up. And yeah, so thanks for showing that, Jonas. Oops, I
No
went.
problem.
And okay, I do want to say something relating again, Sharon. I have a soft spot for Sharon. Okay, so let me reply. I'm so happy you guys are covering step files and so forth. So I do need to make a general disclaimer about CAD files. There is no rule. When you're dealing with CAD files, you may find yourself in one of the following situations. Your colleague next to you or in another room is actually making the CAD file, and that allows you to test with a small part what's the best way to export from every specific software you're using, so that you can optimize the import in Cinema 4D and use the grouping methods, whether it's layers or colors, because all these are supported by CAD programs. That's why we have them in the import. But the most common thing is that your client has procured a CAD model from the designers that work for the factory, that work for the contractor that makes whatever that thing is. And they work to their own specifications because those CAD files are not used for you to do the visualization. They're used for the particular machine that's going to make this, whatever it's folding or cutting or chipping away or so forth. And a lot of times there are issues we face which they're non-issues for the CAD file. So you will find yourselves having to play around with settings. My advice when you're receiving CAD files, if you have in that selection, if it's one CAD file, then you need to start playing with the settings. There are settings that can cut up all those very long polygons you get. You get those triangles, which are very long. There's actually a setting that will make very small squares and only triangulate wherever a triangle is necessary. And that will give you a better surface with less normal issues and so forth. And my advice is if you do have a small sized CAD file in terms of gigabytes, start recording, and you can save presets for your imports. So change the values, untwirl all the buttons, change values, and start playing around to see for that particular export that was provided to you, which are the best settings to do it. And don't wait 20 minutes or 15 minutes. We have run into 45 minutes and 50-minute CAD imports, and it's nothing we can do about it. It's got a lot of data. And see what's the optimum way to do that. So it is a trial and error situation. And that is my advice about CAD files. If you do have access to the people that make them, find a certain platform, try a few tests with smaller parts first to find the most optimal way of exporting them and grouping them as well. That will facilitate rendering.
Yeah, there's even a very interesting workflow that I actually always wanted to try. So, but it is necessary that the company that you get the CAD files from is using the same materials over and over again. And then the CAD file would come in with the materials. Let's say, let me quickly switch back to that other thing and
I'm adding you.
Share my screen. Here we go. And then those materials would come in, and you would have most of the time they have cryptic names, but you could create another file that is using those cryptic names as material names, but those are like the final rendering materials. So you create that material, you make it perfect, and then you name it after the other material that came from the CAD file. And then there is one feature here. It's the material exchanger. That is a pretty crazy thing, because what it does is you can reference another file, and it will have a look at the names of the materials, compare them to the materials that you have in your scene, or the names of the materials you have in your scene, and if there is a match, it will replace them. So you could get those files from the client, and let's just say that aluminum is always the same like ID or same material name, and rubber is always the same as well, and iron is the same, and whatever materials you have. And then you would have this other file that only has the materials in it, and you would use the material exchanger, and all materials would be replaced, like all that are available in both files. So that's a cool way of doing that.
There are many tricks you can work with the CAD files. And one thing I'd like to suggest is if any one of you has issues with specific CAD files, or you've opened it and it's a big mess and you don't know what to do and so forth, we are secretive. We won't give out the CAD files. Terms and conditions apply. But in that case, what you could do, I'm looking for the banner, is contact one of these two lovely people on Twitter, Twixer, X, whatever you want to call it, YZ. And especially I'm very happy to look at these things, and I'm creating some little tools here and there and some workflows. I like to solve these kind of problems.
Make sure that you get permission from the client, because sometimes these files are very sensitive and
I'm
can
Greek.
cause huge financial damage.
I'm Greek. I don't care. Send me your files. I'll probably blackmail you. But I do want to show something here. So I do want to show a super tip, just in case you don't know it, right? Probably everyone knows it, but if you don't know it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create material. Right. I want to change the name. Material 1, material 2, material 3, right? We have 3 materials and we have 3 objects. These can be 3, 4, 100 objects. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So you have a file now that has 60,000 objects with, but I don't know how many materials here or how many other objects that share the same material or different materials and so forth. There are different ways where you can use Cinema 4D to sort of group these things. You can rename stuff in the materials and the object manager with the naming tool, just Shift-C naming tool. The naming tool provides you with ways to change names, so you can add suffixes, prefixes, and replace something with something else, and so forth. Another thing you can do is go to your little funnel here, which has objects, tags, materials, material tags. I want to select all material tags. There you go. So I've selected all the material tags now in my document that has 60,000. You see 3, but imagine 60,000. And if you have your final
3 is the new 60,000.
yes. So this is the final underscore 100 underscore final material, right? This is the naming convention. And you want to get this material and replace all the materials you're seeing. You can go here, double click, select all the material tags. And then when it's open here, drag this one here. This will replace all the materials. Other things you can do is make a specific selection of your materials. If you click on a material and you go to the assign, it will show you all the objects that have that material. So you can select your object from here. You can double click on this and right click here and it will select the tag. So you can right click, select the object that has that material. Or you can go here and you can right click on the tag and select the tag. So you can pinpoint where everything is. If things are hidden under hierarchies, and they're closed, and there's another hierarchy, right? You don't know where things are, and let's go fold all. And you want to discover where a specific object is. Imagine 60,000 of these nulls, and each one having 60,000 objects. Well, you select your material, you go here and you say select object, right click, select object. And even if it's not here, you press S and it will take you there. Now, if you see this weird thing, just control double click on this and it will auto adjust. So you can very easy with a couple of clicks navigate through this very interesting hierarchies. And on my YouTube channel, YouTube /@Noseman, I think I had a leprechaun left me a plugin, Instancify, that uses some weird thing to create instances out of geometrically similar objects. The importer does that for you if you use instances. But in any case, if you do have a difficulty with a CAD file, send it my way, DM me on Twitter, and I may have some trick up my sleeve to help you. I've done this a lot with users, and I did a lot of this when I was in the UK working with packaging. And yeah, so yeah, let me know if you have any issues with CAD files. That's for the current. Are you going to do a question, or shall we go and
I can do the IRIG question.
The IRIG. So the one that Jonas is going to do is Dean's question. Hey, Ducky Dean. I'd love to know to correctly set up an iTarget rig. So yeah, what Jonas is showing. There you go.
So so luckily, so I'm going to go through a little bit of this process, but if you go to the asset browser and type in eyes, you will find this example scene that is showing you how to create an eye rig. And there are multiple components that are important here. So one is, of course, the eye target, so that the eye is always pointing to the correct place. Then we also will have some deformation in here. That's not always required. But one thing that I really like is this one, where you can see that the eyelid is always moving along with the eye, with the direction. So that the upper lid is always, no matter if you look up or look down, it's pretty much in the same place relative to the, how do you call it, to the iris. And yeah, have a look at this one. But I already extracted a few things here. So if you had two eyes, just do the same thing for both eyes. But in this case, let's have a look at the eye first. So here's the eye. It's interesting that it's called left eye, although it's just an eye. But let's assume it's the left eye. What you see here is that it's pointing towards this controller with its y-axis. All right, that's important information. The place where you should have this by default is the axis of the eye, and then just move it forward perfectly. So you, let's say let's just do this. So you create the circle. It's way too big. Let's go with 2 centimeters. You can make it a child of the eye, then open up the coordinates manager, reset transform. This will put it into the exact same space. You could also use Alt-0 to do that, and then move it forward using this arrow. And then you can also just rotate it in so that it's the correct axis or plane. So here we go. This is how you do that. Then the next thing is, there are various ways of targeting this to that. The easiest one actually is the target tag. But the target tag is coming with one major restriction, and that is that the target object is always, or it's pointing to the target tag, the target object always with its z-axis, not with the y. It's always using the z-axis, and you cannot change it here. Okay, so what can we do about this? Actually, there is something. Let me just undo this. Is this working with undo? Yeah, here we go. Instead, I would go with one of the rigging tags, and that is the Constrain Tag. In the Constrain Tag, we have various ways of constraining one object to another. And there's also an aim functionality in here. So let's do that. And then we're getting this aim tab, and we can tell the eye to look at this one. So let's first define the eye, or the direction where it is supposed to look at, and then define the axis. In this case, it's plus y. And now you can see, all right, the eye is now pointing towards this, this object. And now I can already move this around, and this will work. I'm going to undo this, and then just to make sure that this is the default position for this controller, I'm going to go to the Coordinates tab and freeze the transformation. What this will do is it will zero out the coordinates, write those coordinates in here. And now whenever I move this around, I can just hit reset transform or use Control, Alt-0 to bring it back to the default position. Okay, so this is an important one. The other important part is you can see that the axis here is not laying straight in here. But later, if you want to deform the eyelid, you need to make sure that this axis here, either the Z or the X, is always pointing up or down, at least to the same direction. Because what can happen when you move this is that suddenly this will flip a little bit, and now you can see that it's laying in 3D space, like it's aligned in a completely different way, and we want to avoid that. Right, that was the wrong shortcut. Let me just here we go. All right, so how can we do this? Also here in the Constrain Tag, because there's not only an aim mode, but also an up mode. This is one that is there to define an up vector. So you can define the direction that is used to point to. This is where it's looking at. And then the up vector to make sure that the rotation of the eye is not happening like around that axis of view direction. I'm not sure if this was clear. Thanasis, was it clear?
Trying to mute myself and my mouse was jumping around. Yeah, I was replying to something. Yeah, that was clear.
Okay.
You know, I can always show the 10-second version just for fun.
I want to explain it a little bit more so that you know what is happening. To create that up vector, I'm usually creating a second null here. So I'm selecting the eye, and in this case, I'm going to show you how to create the null in the exact same position as the eye. So eye needs to be selected. You hold down the Shift key, press the null icon, and now it's exactly here. And we can move it up, in this case, in world space, because otherwise it's aligned weirdly. I didn't think about that, but let's just zero out those coordinates here. All right, so now we have the eye target, and we have the up vector. And let me just make the up vector the actual up vector. So we want Z to point upwards, and we're going to use this null here. All right, and now you can see that the eye, what is happening here? What is happening here? This should look up, actually. Let me double check. So this is plus Y. It's targeting the circle. This one is that. And here in axis, we need to use Y. All right, that's the correct setting here. And now, no matter what I do here, if I look here or the other way around, the Z is always going to point upwards. And this is important. Okay, then the second part of this is creating the eyelids and stuff. So let's have a quick look at that. I'm gonna go to points mode, and let's say we want to create a little movement here for the eyelid, at least a blink. Then what you would do is you would create a morph target here. So in this case, it already has been created for the lower, this is the upper lid, like so, and the lower lid. And we can animate these two now. And yeah, bring this into like a relation with the eye is definitely a good thing. So I'm not sure if I should go through this or if we want to save some time for another question. But I can do that. One of the important things here is that this one has been created as a rotational morph. So you can define an axis, let's say from here to there is going to be an axis, and all these points are then rotating around these points. I'm not sure what the axis is here, but you can define it. And yeah, this way you can make that very, very clean and working quite well. So let me just set these to 50% again. Wait, this one needs to be at 50, and this one needs to be at, oh no, that's correct. Okay, let's go to animate mode. So we are fine here. And now what I would do is I would read the angle here of the eye when I move it up. So let me have a look here. So let's freeze all this transformation, and let's move the controller up. And when I now have a look at the eye, I can see that we're using the pitch here in this case. And yeah, we can use that value in XPresso to drive the morph that has been created here. So let me go to programming tags, XPresso, and I'm gonna use the eyes pitch to drive the pose morphs. What was it? It was the wait, it was this strength. Okay, so here we go. To drive this one here. All right. So now we could connect those two, no problem, but we need a range mapper in between. So let's filter this a little bit, range mapper, and we're going to use the input. The input is going to be degrees. So let's say the input lower is minus 30, well, let's say minus 15. And the upper one is plus 15. And then, yeah, let's go with percentages here. And let's see what is happening, if that's already working or not, or if I missed anything.
You haven't connected it.
I haven't connected it. That is correct.
So always connect your nodes. That's the lesson for today.
So here you can see it's already the wrong way around, which is looking quite weird. But yeah, that's sometimes how it works. So we could just reverse this, and that should work then. Right. So now we're going up and down with this movement. Let's just say we will go from 20 to 80. I think that's better. Yeah, and now you can see that the upper eyelid is pretty close to the rim of the iris here. Whatever we are doing, and now I can look here, down, and the upper lid is always following. So this is a quite cool thing. But one thing that I just noticed, I just undid this whole thing, and you can see that the eyelid is still up there. And now I did something else, and the eyelid was snapping down. And that is because of the execution order here. So the problem that we have now is that those expressions that we just set up are not in the correct order. So let's see what needs to be first. Actually, this one needs to be first. And in the basic tab of these expressions, we have a priority setting. So it is set to expression, but the most important thing is this numerical value can go from minus 499 to plus 499. If you go to minus, if you go negative, it will be executed earlier within the frame or within the update. And if you go positive, it will be executed later. So let's just set this to minus 10. So we make sure that this constraint here, that is the aim constraint, is always going to be executed first. And then after that, we're going to, this has been executed because the priority is 0. And now let's have a look at the pose morph if that has a priority as well. It does. So just in case, let's set this to -5. So we are first executing the constraint, then the XPresso tag, and then the pose morph. And now, in theory, this should work. And even if I undo now, you can see that it did the correct thing. All right, so this is how I would create an iRig, and that also then connect this to the lower lid as well, so that this is following as well. Not as much as the top one, but also at least a little bit. And then you already have a very organic iRig here. You're just moving around this controller, and it's not just the eye direction, but also the eyelid that will follow automatically. It's a lot of fun to set this up, because once you are in this state, this already looks so, well, it has some life in it, and that's really cool. All right, I'm done here.
Okay, I'm going to go to Jonathan Vellis's question that asks, how can I get a sharp light sweep across the face of text similar to what's normally seen in flat animations and After Effects? The very famous phone effect. We can't, I don't want to use company names here, so I'm just getting this simple thing. Now, for the way I like to do that, it's like fake it, like nothing before. Right, just add a bit of that. Now let's create a material that is quite shiny. Let's go to my Redshift layout, and here's my text. Let's go make this a bit metallic. So double click here. The quick way to make it metallic is to put some metalness on it. There you go, it's metallic. And you want that line. And you can do it with a light. I don't want to do it with a light. I want to do it with a different thing. You get a plane, you point it towards the direction, you put it right in front of your text, right there. So you know exactly where it's going to appear. You don't, no guesses. You may rotate it a bit. And you apply a luminant material on it, luminant material. So let's go here and add an emissive material. There we go. And no color or reflections or anything like that. Now, you would say, yeah, but it's obscuring my thing. And let's make this a bit more shiny, just because I can. So there you go, less roughness. Well, all you have to do is add it to a, I think it's called a trace set, include, exclude, go to render tags, add this. And in the visibility, you have overrides. So I don't want to see it by camera. There you go, done. You only see it through reflections. The secondary rays are those reflections. I don't want to cast any shadows. I don't want to receive any shadows. Visible in reflections is the only thing. I don't want it casting reflections. I don't want it visible in refractions unless you do. I don't care about it being in GI and all that. So this will just keep it as a reflection. And all you have to do here is just go to your emission value down here and just set the emission to a crazy amount. And there you go. And if you want it not to be that sharp, you can always go and get a radial gradient and put it in the opacity, and it will make it. See if that's going to work. Ramp.
That's exactly what I wanted to add here, that adding gradients here is always a good idea. Most of the time when we see these types of things, it can even be a ramp that is going so that you have a straight line that is very, very crisp and very sharp. And then on the other side, you fade it out. And usually I would do that in the opacity.
Did I put it in the transparency? I put it in the opacity. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
So get a ramp and make sure when you get the ramps, I just want to just linearize it, interpolation linear, and just right click and invert gradient. And you're going to get the back to front, front to back. You can control how it's going to fall off here. So you can create a little transition.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult right now because you cranked the luminance up to more than 1.
I do that kind of stuff. But there you go. So you can create all sorts of things. You can make your own shapes, but it's just a fake, but it's very well faked. And the fact that it's close to the object, so this is the magic. If you make something work like light, you put it away, you scale it up, you try and find when it's starting to reflect in there, you move it down, then you move your camera. And of course, if this is what you want, that's how you're going to do it. But if for any reason you're doing something that's very, you want it absolutely art directable, you want that line to stay there regardless of the angle of your camera and all that, the closer you put it, the less parallax you're going to have. So now I can go anywhere. It's going to stay there. There's a very small a declination of where it's going to appear. And again, the closer you put it, the smaller that's going to be. And in theory, if you go and say, well, I'm going to put it so close that they need to get married, then it won't move anywhere. There it is. And it's still a reflection, right? So there you go. Looking forward to seeing your new mobile cell phone ad.
Another thing that I want to add here is usually, well, in those cases, you often have 100% plain text. But one thing that you can also do to add a little bit more, to make it a little more interesting, is that you can crank up the count of spline points, intermediate points, and then make it so that the surface also has a lot of geometry. Right, let me move away ourselves here a little bit. There we go.
So get
and then what you
uniform. Yep.
Yeah, and then what you can do is, and this works especially well when you have like an HDR or something that can reflect in there, and then add a little bit of a curvature over the whole thing so that it's a little bit convex.
The text.
And that will look even cooler than if you have a
so
an
what
HDR
Jonas is talking about is having some sort of roundness on your surface in general always catches reflections better. And instead of doing that complex setup, I'm going to do it a very simple way. You get a bend deformer. I'm just going to show you. It's not fit for all solutions, but you will see how this sort of affects what you're doing. Go here, set it to unlimited, and let's move this a bit this way, and always keep length. So I have this little roundness, right? Little. It's not that little. And
I
yeah,
barely see it.
if you have an environment, so let's say we didn't have this, and we had some other sort of environment here, it actually catches the reflections better. Flat surfaces are not ideal for capturing reflections, and that is the basic principle of what Jonas is saying. If you do find a way, did I get a 16K texture right here? It's a very good chance I did do that. Anyway, in any case, rounded objects tend to catch more of the environment. That's the idea behind this. If it's straight, if it's zero, you get this constant sort of like a mirror, you're reflecting the same stuff. The more it bends, the more it receives from the environment. I'm going to exaggerate it. So now we're getting more light over here. And you can do this locally by inflating the surface. There are ways to do it using volumes and all that, or what Jonas said, or some sort of bevel and all that. But yes, if you're doing things that you like them to capture reflections, make sure you have some sort of roundness to make it a bit more interesting. Now, there's a question by Agente. Hit me up on Twitter because I'd like to see what you mean by this, and it's not something I think we can tackle immediately. Just let me know, and we'll get to it. I want to get to one last thing, two last things. two last things. Again, a user asked on our forum that I'm trying to, let me quickly apply a material to a selection, just in case you don't know this. If you have an object with a selection and no selection tag, if you take that material and apply it directly to your selection, it will create the material, the selection tag, and apply the material. So it's a quick way of doing that. I do not know what the problem exactly is with this. So if the user is watching us, hit me up on Twitter so we can do this. And the last question I want to take, oh my God, it's 10 minutes past. Okay, very quick one. There was a question about if we have if you have a rigid body object, whether it's a bullet or the new simulation, I'm going to go with the new simulations, right? And let's put a quick plane down here, and let's just make this a rigid body. So simulation rigid body, and make this a collider. So simulation collider. Good. Now, if I have, let's say, a light, let's create a light here, move it over here, and I want this to target animation, target the rigid body, then there shouldn't be a problem, because with rigid bodies, you can see it's pointing. With rigid bodies, we're moving the matrix of the object, all right? But what if this sphere here was not a rigid body? It was a cloth. So let's go and check this out. Let's go and create from the simulation tag a soft body or something in like that. The light doesn't see it. And this is because soft bodies and cloth and all that are basically deformers. They deform the mesh, but as far as the simulation is concerned, the cinema is concerned, the axis is still here. So what can we do to get the light to point at an object that's not an RBD? Well, here is the trick. It's not perfect. It will work in, I don't know, some situations. But here's how you can do that. We need a rigid body object to follow, but it won't be this. You take a minuscule little object here. Let's make it 2. And let's call this target. Let's make it a child of the sphere, just because I want to sort of center it to that. Let's assume that's the position I want. It can be any of the positions. So what we will do with this is, I want to find a way for this rigid body, because we can follow a rigid body. So if I go here and put the target here, I want to find a way for it to follow this. And the best way to do this is to take your sphere object, add a connector, and just get other objects, not itself. Let's live update, and let's increase this until we see these lines here. So now what's happening is that our rigid body is being attached to this soft body object using the connector tag. And because it's going to be moving, the light is going to be following it. Because it's small, it won't have such a huge effect. But we have to be careful with this, because it is an object. It will collide, but it will allow you to do something like this. And this can become, very soft. I can make this 1500. I can get rid of these. It can be a proper, cloth that falls down. And oh, there we go. Soft body. That's my sphere. So, oh yeah, no bendiness and stretchiness. There you go. So now it's a nice little bendy, floppy sphere, but still we get it to look at it, because yeah, even if it falls, now you can see that it's being affected by these little buggers over here. So in this particular case, I mean, this is gonna fail anyway, but you still get something looking in the correct direction. Maybe the solution for something like this would be to take your target, put it very close to the bottom of the point, and attach it with a single point that's close. There you go. So it is here, it is attached, but it will have a minimum effect on the rest of your object. So play around with this if you wish to do something in that respect. And there you go. That is my solution for this particular problem. I think we're done.
All right. Yeah, let's wrap up for today.
Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Those were cool questions. Thank you, everyone, for asking us these questions.
As usual, it's getting boring. Good questions all the time. Come on.
Are you going to do the housekeeping? You have the website still open, right?
Are we going to do housekeeping again? Let's do housekeeping.
Well, just you can show the page to ask
There we
questions.
go.
I think that would be a cool thing.
So there we go. So go to this page here, which you can get to this page if you where's my banners? No, it's not banner, it's part of the brand.
I'm gonna bring it up. It's an
There
overlay.
you go.
Yeah.
Just take a snapshot of that and it'll take you to this page, and it has most of the stuff that are interesting. So I can get rid of that now. Free t-shirts. Talking about free t-shirts, don't forget that for this month the code is Easy Motion Graphics. Let me copy and paste it in the comments. So everyone,
I can do that.
Oh, okay, good. You can do that. So you can just copy and paste it. Hi, Oliver. And don't forget that if you miss any of these videos, they are stored. They are going to be available to you to watch the recordings of them with timestamps and comments kindly provided by our favorite friend, Dr. Sassy. And you'll find them on the Maxon Training Team channel. And although we are streaming on the Maxon YouTube channel, you will not find the recordings on the Maxon YouTube channel. But nonetheless, go and check a quadrillion different websites, videos. And of course, you have links to all these interesting YouTube channels, the Maxon
including the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, as I just
including the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. Yay.
Yeah.
And don't forget, go to the Olds University and check out all the over 10,000 tutorials we have there. Technically, things have changed, but a lot of the main information is still relevant. And of course, visit our new, shiny, beautiful teaching website, cineversity.com, and check out all the stuff I've made and others.
All right, cool.
So I think with this, we are done. And it was a pleasure hanging out with you, Jonas, and all our good friends, regulars and not. Keep asking your questions, go to the links, and contact us on the socials, Badoom, and simplify your scenes, ask your questions, and DM us for any questions, or use the form, which then we can get to in our own time. Excellent.
Yeah, you will see the link in a second in that closer animation as well.
Fantastic. Closer.
All right.
Jonas, where's the closer?
I can bring it up.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Bye.